Hello YouTube, welcome to a special edition of my news analysis. The only real new thing is this nice new overlay we've got going on, yeah. So, there we go. But yeah, so welcome to news analysis where I effectively just go over episodes of my LoL recaps and just kind of talk about what's important and why in the League of Legends community. So, we're going to skip the PBE just because all it really is balance changes. And these balance changes were part of the 7.3 patch. 7.3 is already out, and all of them I go over in my patch 7.3 rundown, which you can see on it's this button right above me, right there. So starting off with Gillette sponsoring ESL and xPeke being in the commercial. So this is really just ESL picking up like a big name brand for their tournament, which is pretty hype. Really the second any big brand invests in the esports scene, it develops hype for us. Many of us in the esports scene want to see esports legitimized and more culturally acceptable, so when a big mainstream company senpai such as Gillette notices us, it feels like we're still progressing and moving forward as an industry. xPeke is definitely one of the more handsome figures in the scene, so using him as a model for their advertisement is a way of combating the stereotype that gamers are all just kind of basement-dwelling neckbeard geeks, etc. So this is a good move for Gillette. They've been in the sports scene for a while and recognize esports' development as well. So it's not really the biggest surprise to see that Gillette is showing up in a scene where the demographic is mostly male, since that's really their target audience as far as their shaving products is concerned. Definitely both sides benefiting from this. I can also vouch for Gillette products myself. My manual razors a Gillette Fusion, though admittedly I haven't really shaved in a while, so something I gotta do. So LCS teams aren't scrimming Echo Fox. So this is pretty scandalous, but not the worst thing in the world for the team, honestly. So theoretically, it would be really good to scrim top tier teams because in a sense, you know, you're playing against the top team and you know, you can get better from them, you can learn a lot from them. You'll learn a lot about your own mistakes and how they can get exploited, but it can really also damage the team morale, especially in the long term. But there's been examples in the past of teams scrimming against lower tier teams that sort of boost their confidence going into an important game, but can also focus on their own strategies. So Echo Fox scrimming against challenger teams and their own sister team kind of allows them to focus more on their own strategies and perfecting them without the hassle of getting exploited at multiple steps. This is huge for teams like Echo Fox because this really allows them to practice closing out games, which a lot of teams end up being infamous for. It's not uncommon for a team near the bottom of the standings to have like okay early games and actually look pretty decent, but then don't know what to do with their gold leads, and then they end up, you know, getting taken advantage of, and they just kind of throw the game away. So there's been discussions of people saying that Riot should force teams to scrim each other, but personally I don't really think that's the best idea. Like, I think I like the idea of teams having perfectly even scrim schedules across all the other teams in theory, but in practice, in a way that's kind of similar to like an elementary or high school teacher assigning groups themselves for projects, unless the setting is like professional, such as a promo video shoot or a scheduled LCS match. I don't really think anyone should be forced to interact with each other. Scrim times are valuable, and teams for the most part are more than capable of being left to their own devices to schedule their own scrims and design them the way they want. I don't really see why a top tier team should be forced to scrim against a lower tier team if they don't want to. Sorry. I already mentioned how some teams need to practice how to properly close out a game or like hone a strategy, but like what if that team already knows what they're doing and just need to practice doing it against a competent or other top tier team? Like, being forced to scrim against lower tier teams would only be a bit of a waste of their time. It might make the domestic competition there a bit more closer, but that isn't going to super prepare them for an Eastern team if they qualify for an international tournament. So hypothetically, let's say Cloud9 only scrims against top tier teams for a whole split, then they qualify for MSI, and that's about 4 or so months of high quality prep time. So now another hypothetical where they are forced to scrim against lower tier teams and then qualify for MSI, and then they're free to scrim whoever they want, such as a top tier NA team or, you know, SKT or something like that. So 1 month versus 4 months of high caliber scrim time. We can even We can take this even further and say, what if MSI teams were forced to scrim against other MSI teams? How much better do you think SKT is going to get off that? Like, imagine being SKT and having to be forced to scrim against Lion Gaming. So Montez chimed in on this and said that back when he was a team owner, there were agreements or pacts amongst teams where they would not scrim against teams that they either think poached or know have poached. So this is actually really good, because on top of teams making their own scrimming decisions, that type of agreement makes it so that there's even less incentive to try to poach players. So Echo Fox, when they poached Adrian, technically they couldn't get punished because of Riot's own inability to update their player contract database. Riot did not want to punish Rick Fox because, well, I think if Rick Fox can afford a private jet for his team, then he can also afford a lawyer. And Riot flubbed up, and that's why they couldn't really punish Fox for it. But clearly, laws and rules aside, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, or like any of the timeline that it all happened in. But clearly, Echo Fox did something that the other teams didn't like. Like, if they approached Adrian, and then Adrian said, "Oh no, sorry, I'm on Phoenix 1 now," and then Echo Fox said, "Oh, okay, sorry," and then backed off, then I'm pretty sure that, like, not a single person would actually have an issue with that. But clearly something more than that happened that a lot of people collectively don't agree with. So this is the teams practicing their own right to do whatever they want with their free time, because teams actually aren't obligated to scrim, period. Let alone with anyone specifically. Like, if a team scrims, that's their own decision. This is teams saying, you already have our contracts to do X promos for your scene. We're already going to plan your scheduled LCS matches. We're going to take our own time into our own hands, and we're going to do whatever we want with it. So, for replay.gg, I don't really have much to say about replay.gg. It was a pretty good replay database. Like, all you had to do was really sign up for it, and then the website would actually archive your most previous game. So if by chance you forgot to launch your Baron replay or something like that before going into game and something notable happened, replay.gg effectively was your backup source for that replay. I personally won't be needing that service anymore anyways. I have my Baron replay to set... my Baron replay is set to launch whenever I log in, so I don't really have to worry about it at all. But I like that the reason they're shutting down is because Riot has finally done their own replay system. As I mentioned before, when you look at a site like replay.gg or like YouTube repeat.com, basically that's just a third-party way of kind of petitioning, saying, okay, this is a feature that we want you to actually implement. So that's a thing. Let's go over here. So LCK players now being on Twitch is actually pretty big. For too long, LCK players have had to stream on a Zubu, because I think it was part of their contracts. Like, I think it was like teams involved in like any Kespa tournament or something like that had to like work with the Zubu, because the Zubu and Kespa were close. I actually don't know, so there's an asterisk there. But finally, there's been a switch where these players are now going over to Twitch. So that's a huge step for the Korean community, because it's quite easy to overlook a Zubu when Twitch exists. Like, if you think, oh, I'm going to go watch a stream, you don't usually think, oh, okay, I'm going to go to a Zubu and check out what they're doing there. Like Faker got like a really low amount of viewers on a Zubu. Like that's just how bad a Zubu is. So actually for Faker's stream specifically, apparently they tried to do an on-the-fly translator, but there would be quite the delay from Faker's stream to the actual Twitch community. It wasn't received positively by the community, as they felt that they weren't really as close with Faker as they would have liked. But for like a beta stream testing, I think it's all right. Like, I don't really blame them for trying to experiment with the idea of a live translator, but it's all about appealing to the viewers. So if the viewers don't like it, then the viewers don't like it, and it's time to try something else. So apparently SKT players are now going to learn English, so that's going to be really hype. Their English will probably be on the same level as like Rush or Huni, but regardless, that's going to be pretty exciting to watch. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see many more outplays from Korean solo queue on the League subreddit. Maybe some more like montages or like best of X during this month or something like that. So I don't really have any real complaints here. So Riot employees now getting Twitch subs on their channel is a pretty significant change. So Monte Cristo pointed out beforehand that Riot contracts for their broadcast team were very strict. Like, they couldn't monetize their own independent content, so their YouTube, their Twitch, couldn't monetize it. So Riot effectively was saying that if you want to work with us, any opportunity for you to make money has to go through us as well. I'm not really sure what the incentive was for Riot to make that sort of clause on their contracts. Maybe it was to stop players from making agreements with other parties or something like that, which I get. But I genuinely don't see why anyone should be stripped of their own right to like make their own revenue off of their own independent content that they work on themselves. So Scarizard leaving Riot Games, pretty sad. I've been used to seeing his name pop up here or there on Twitter or just the community in general. He was part of making the patch notes significant and entertaining to read. That's always good. Definitely wishing him the best of luck in his future endeavors. I remember this one tweet of his back during NALCS Season 6 Summer Finals, where they went to Toronto's Air Canada Centre, because I actually went there. But Scarizard was kind of saying, like, he was at the border, and they asked, like, what are you doing there? And he's like, oh, I'm there for a video game tournament. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. It wasn't like that when I went over to, I visited New York for the Season 5 Summer Finals at Madison Square Garden, and yeah, definitely going into the US is a lot more cutthroat and spooky when compared to going into Canada, so it's like a thing. But yeah, I like that Scarizard tweeted that. Respect to Canada. Represent. So, losing SKT and Samsung for the IEM World Championships are pretty significant, but also right before I started recording this, it turns out Cloud9 has also pulled out. So all huge blows to potential viewership numbers for the tournament overall. Although since their replacements are like, for SKT and Samsung, for their replacements to be like bottom of the pack Korean teams, it certainly does make predictions for this tournament a little more interesting. Cloud9, or not Cloud9 anymore, so Edward Gaming, Flash Wolves, and Unicorns of Love are all currently number 1 in their respective regions at the moment, so in many ways this is still going to be a fun World Championships to watch. H2K and M19 aren't looking as good as they used to be compared to their previous rosters, but it'll be good practice for them, definitely. Kongbu Monster came in second at IEM Jeonji, so they'll be looking to prove themselves. This is for the new Rocks Tigers lineup. It'll be fun to watch as well because their mid laner Mickey especially will finally be on the international stage. And I'm sure he's really looking forward to make a statement because he's had very good domestic performances, but his team couldn't ever really qualify for any international tournament. In many ways, Mickey's team, like Mickey has been kind of a kryptonite to Faker in some regards. Africa has been kind of though the old Africa lineup was kind of a kryptonite to SKT for whatever reason. Not all the time, like SKT and Faker, they'd still clap their respective opponents, but there has been some times where like SKT would just kind of drop the odd game against them. So also for Rocks Tigers, their support player Key, he's also played at IEM back when he was on Team Ever, so this will definitely be a testament to how good other regions are. I think this would definitely cause meltdowns if any of these teams lost to Kongdu or Rocks Tigers. So I think it's too early to make predictions. I'd rather wait a couple weeks to see when we're actually closer to the start of the event, because we're still a minimum of like 2 patches to go, I think, until this tournament actually starts, and teams individually could still get better or decline in skill, so I don't want to talk just yet, and we also have to find out who Cloud9's replacement is going to be. So if we look at roster changes here, Fnatic is really going to benefit from this change. So, like the actual main Fnatic squad, not Fnatic Academy. So, both lighting the fire under Amazing's Ars to kind of get him playing better. So, while also giving Broxa some valuable LCS experience. One of these situations where Fnatic can only really benefit it in the long haul. I don't really have any real comments on any of these changes, honestly. I think I'm going to go right on ahead and skip right to our Riot news here. So, this is a pretty big FU to Europe right here. EU Challenger teams to drop sister teams come summer 2017. So Riot is forcing if you have a team in Europe, you can't have a second team. Like, they can't play in any official Riot sanctioned tournament. That's basically what it is. So Riot Games does not want organizations to be able to kind of harvest top tier talent and then just qualify for the LCS and sell the spot for $2.5 million, just like Cloud9/FlyQuest did. So to stop this, they implemented a rule in North America that only a maximum of 3 LCS orgs can have a team in the Challenger Series. These three sister teams cannot play. These three sister teams can play in the tournament and win money, but they cannot participate in the actual promotion tournament because they want to give legitimate Challenger players a shot at qualifying for the LCS. So, which seems pretty fair. But now they're turning to Europe and saying, okay, your sister teams can't even exist, period. One in Challenger or one in Professional. That's it. You got to choose. So I don't really know any of the context behind why this decision was made. But now I guess Fnatic Academy and Misfits Academy have to really step up because their orgs can now either sell an LCS slot or a Challenger Series slot. And they're going to get way more money if their teams qualify for the LCS. Small Gatorade break. So, next class update will be for tanks. So tanks for the most part right now are very easy to play. Just kind of win through their base stats in a lot of cases. So Riot wants to make the tanks a bit more mechanically demanding while still being, big and beefy and serving the frontline disruptor role that tanks are supposed to have. I think Braum and Sion are both very good cases of this because their kits require skill. Sion is big and sluggish. He can absorb a lot of damage and even do a good amount of damage if he hits his abilities right. They have like these big cast times. And Braum can, really save a teammate in a clutch situation by positioning his shield and ultimate in the right directions. Maokai or Nautilus, however, just kind of seem to generally be there and don't really have to worry much about landing skill shots or anything like that. They just kind of snowball off of base stats, and they could just kind of stand in front of a team and land their point and click crowd control. That isn't really fun to play against. So if our Maokais and Nautiluses can be more like our Brahms and our Scions, then that's going to be a really exciting class update. Let's look at these rotations and sales here. So none of these champions currently really jump out at me as a must play. If you're new or you just don't really have any of these champions. So Nami is a great champ to pick up and learn the basics of supporting with. Soraka too, but I would say Nami is a little bit easier at the current moment. Renekton is a pretty good straightforward lane bully to play. Sivir, I would say, is easier between herself and Jinx as the two marksmen. Volibear and Vi are both fun to play in the jungle. Both of these mid laners of Karthus and Kassadin are pretty hard to play against, or hard to play as. They're both kind of late game centric and have pretty tough lane phases. So let's look at our sales here. None of these champions specifically jump out at me as like a current must play. Also, Gnar is 975, 487. Whoops, probably gonna have to throw another annotation there. Whoopsies. If you buy Cottontail Fizz, you're a piece of shit. Blitz can be a good champion to pick up, but I think I would just rather buy them with IP. And Rek'Sai is meta right now, but he isn't as good in solo queue as he is in competitive. And Gnar is worth trying out. He's really fun to play. If you're a top laner, you want to expand your champion pool, Gnar is a pretty solid pickup. Let's look at our birthdays. This is where are you? Page 1. There we go. So we talked about Alex Each last week, so I'm actually going to kind of skip over him. Karma is a great champion to pick up for both support and mid lane. 45% CDR and her shield late game is just really strong. I didn't play the old Karma, but some players like to play her mid lane and kind of cheese opponents. It's a good cheese strat. Ziggs is a good wave clear bot. I used to main mid lane Gragas and kind of miss his old playstyle, but he's still a really fun champ to play, especially if you can get used to the fixed travel time on his ultimate now. I think I should play him more in the jungle and top lane, especially since he's recently been buffed. Pantheon is a good straightforward anti-carry, but he's really feast or famine. He also struggles late game. Sakuya is the transgender player qualified for the LCS with Renegades, and I think she was kind of the one behind the Renegades ban way back when. So back when the ruling was put out with Renegades, part part of it was because the team wasn't providing a safe environment for the players. And I remember after that, players on the team at the time, like Crumbs, etc., like Maple Street, they were kind of tweeting like our situation was safe. Like, what the hell is this? Well, Maple Street was actually just kind of memeing about it, but that's Maple Street. He likes to meme. But Sakuya stayed really quiet about it. And apparently there was a single heated situation between Sakuya and co-owner Chris Badawi, but that was apparently settled like the day afterwards. So maybe between the original dispute and like the resolution, maybe Sakuya like contacted a Riot member or something like that. So I'm not really sure exactly, but Riot was definitely just looking for reasons to ban Renegades, I think. Sakuya doesn't really seem to be able to stay in one place for a prolonged amount of time. Recently went to Chaos Latin Gamers on Southern Latin America, but then also left for health reasons. Now she's just currently a substitute player for FlyQuest because it's mandatory to have substitutes. Yeah, I hope Sakuya gets their stuff under control. But Easy is an example of a NA Challenger player trying to have luck in a wildcard region, but not really finding much success. Peanut, as you know, right now superstar jungler playing for SKT. Sawson was never really that great of a mid laner, also on losing teams all the time. I don't really have much to say about King, though I do remember he was punished once for toxicity. Piglet, as you know, former world champion, kind of a staple of Team Liquid as of late. SFM is a Vietnamese jungler in the Chinese LPL, whom has been playing really good there. I'd like to see him on the world stage. Crumbs is an example of a player who was good for the most part on a macro level, but never really had that many individual outplays or micro outplays. He's definitely a really good analyst and would have a good time in journalism, for sure. Selfie is a pretty mechanically good individual. He qualified for LCS last year, but now finding himself in the Challenger Series again, so that's going to be kind of frustrating. And Radier was actually the best AD carry in the Oceanic region. He was basically the OPL's doublelift before he retired last season. Looking at this little time capsule here and some of these stats, I honestly don't really see anything here that really sticks out to me. I think it's kind of surprising to see Swain here. I like seeing Anivia there. But with the recent buffs to lethality, I think we can expect to see some more AD champions here within the next couple weeks. Like in the jungle right now, it's all AD and Ivern. So it's a fairly interesting thing there. But yeah, let's hop on over to our pro tournament results here. Quest and Team Solo Mid. Ooh, double voice. I'm going to close this ad. Lol, giving myself money. So, for the NALCS, at this current moment, watching Immortals and Dignitas has honestly been kind of painful. Not exactly what's going on with the bottom of the standings. If Envious can beat Liquid, and then let's see here. So Envious, they can beat Liquid. No, they lose to Cloud9. Obviously, they're going to lose to Cloud9. So Liquid will lose to Envious, but beat Echo Fox. I don't know. It's kind of a weird rock, paper, scissors going on in the bottom of the standings there. Just a lot of inconsistency across these teams here. TSM had the harder schedule, honestly, between these three teams here. Like TSM, they had to face Phoenix 1 and COG, while Cloud9 just had to go up against Fox and Envy. FlyQuest had to go up against Dignitas and Immortals. So Moon has been looking much better this split. In the past, he was someone who would do really well in solo queue, but then kind of like maybe get some stage fright or something like that. But being on FlyQuest has definitely really helped him out a bit. Making a good comeback, for sure. If you look at our Challenger Series, the NA results are... These are kind of how you would expect it to go, honestly. E United and Gold Coin and Temple's... Like E United and Gold Coin tying. You would kind of expect that. Temple Storm beating Team Gates. You would kind of expect that. I still think that Gold Coin, E United, and Temple Storm will be in the top 2 or top 3, while it's a race for 4th place between Big Gods and Delta Fox. For EU, I can't really say much, but I think it's quite surprising that Paris Saint-Germain straight up lost to Fnatic Academy. Didn't at least tie them. But yeah, that don't really have too much to say about the EU Challenger Series. I don't really know too much about those rosters or how good they're going to be. So EU LCS, I think Fnatic is definitely not looking as good as they should be against both Misfits and Roccat. Like, they shouldn't be dropping a game to Roccat. And they sure as hell should be picking up at least one win against Misfits. So yeah, these are the team standings now after a single round robin in their respective groups. So there's still a lot of League of Legends for all of these teams here. And let's see here. Let's go over to the LCK. So over these past 2 weeks, we've had what I would say some pretty standard performances and predictable results from all of these teams. But Gnar seem to be quite the inconsistent team right now, for sure. I think they've got some, like, they've definitely got really raw mechanical ability. I think Ixu and Snowflower were kind of the better players on Africa before they went over to Gnar. Teddy is apparently a really mechanically gifted AD carry. Kuzan had a really good split last split. So, like, these teams theoretically should, like, well, Gnar theoretically should be doing relatively well. They just need to really work on their actual, shot calling and rotations. So MVP had a really hard week. So they might not stay near the bottom for as long, but Blessed and Tempt and Barbecue in general they've had a pretty easy schedule so far, so I guess it's a matter of seeing how long they can hold their playoff spot. Or actually, earlier with MVP, I said they had a tough schedule, might not be near the bottom. But actually, if I remember my predictions at the beginning of the split, MVP might actually stay there, though that doesn't suddenly cancel out the fact that they just faced SKT and Samsung. Alright, let's go over to our CKR here. Honestly, I actually don't really have any comments here. I don't really know about any of these teams enough. It hasn't been long enough into the split yet. They're only doing like an average of like one match a week. It's been 2 weeks in. For the LMS here, I would say that all of these results are pretty standard. If you generally remember how the LMS has played out over the past few years, there's always a pretty significant and easy to spot top 3 teams. And sometimes it's close for the 4th place, but sometimes the top 4 is just the really obvious top 4. So Flash Wolves and Flash Wolves are up there. HQ should be up there. HQ's loss right now is to the Flash Wolves. J Team's probably going to stay up here, and I would expect Hong Kong Esports to stay up here as well. I would be genuinely surprised if Extreme Gamers, Fireball, Matchy, or Wei Spider ended up in the top 4. The playoffs are definitely going to be Flash Wolves, Hong Kong, J Team, HQ. Otherwise, I'll eat my shoe. I actually flubbed to the overall standings here. It's Fireball in 4th place right now, and not Extreme Gamers. Extreme Gamers is in 6th place. But regardless, it's not going to be like that for too long. So let's go over to the ECS here. So this is actually the tournament that I update the most on esports wikis. I'm usually the one updating the individual match results and the overall standings over the past few weeks. I'll probably have to do the VODs later. These results are actually all pretty standard too, honestly. I think the top 4 are going to continue being J Team 2, Raze Gaming, Yeti, and Non-HK. Wings of Liberty do have a shot though, but we'll see. But I have completely written off HQ Fighter, Cougar, and 228. They're just not really. They don't really have a chance, honestly. Let's see here, CBLOL. I would say these are pretty standard results from this week, but Pain Gaming beating CNB Esports Club is pretty big for them. I would say that it's the least standard result that we've had here. I still don't really have too many comments here, but this top 5 right here is pretty hype. Brazil's going to have a good split, for sure. BRCC, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Ints Genesis is going to kick everyone's ass here. I think they're really the only team that matters. I think they're going to qualify for the CBLOL. If they win, I think if the playoffs are like auto promotion, then Ints is going to be in the CBLOL, or Ints Genesis is going to be CBLOL next split. Also here you can see Ints and Pro Gaming Esports are tied for 1st place here, and then they have a match here later. Ints actually won that one, so here you go. TCL, this is another pretty intense region, Turkey. Though Supermassive is starting off really strong. Gatorade didn't go down the right way. Regardless, though, the Fenerbahce just had a pretty huge boost with those 2 wins that jumped straight from 3-5 to 7-5 for their overall records. I would say rip to HWA Gaming, though. They really bit the dust this week. Also losing to Crew Esports Club, and not just Fenerbahce. But yeah, like Dark Passage here, they lost pretty much like all their members. They lost Elwind to Crew Esports. They lost Zers to Unicorns of Love, Caps to Fnatic, Zaytnot to Supermassive, and Unit back to Fenerbahce. So I don't really expect Dark Passage to be good this split. They've got a long road ahead of them in terms of improvement or anything like that. For the OPL here, Sin Gaming is really the only non-standard result this week. Beating Legacy is a huge pickup, big momentum boost for them, though Legacy did have some roster changes, so they're not going to be as dominant as before. Don't think. So I don't think there's anything else spectacular to say here. Chiefs, Direwolves, and Legacy, they're always usually right here at the top, and they're still at the top, so there we go. Skip on over here to Japan. So 7th Heaven looks to be getting back to their signs of life after this one single win against Detonation Gaming. However, the game they won was actually the game where Detonation played with Shrimp, their new jungler, so take what you will from that. That might not happen again. But 7th Heaven still has a long way to go, and mathematically a minimum of like 3 or more weeks before they can jump into the top 3 again, but they're really just not looking good this split. Really not starting off the way that they would hope. For the CLS here, Last Kings beating Azurus Gaming is a huge pickup for them, but Chaos Latin Gamers tying Azurus Gaming starts to ring some bells there. Like, Azurus Gaming should be the number 1 team at the moment, but Chaos Latin Gamers are in a rebuild, right? So that was their very first win of the split, and they picked it up against Azurus. Rebirth really hoisted themselves into the tie for 4th after their win against the 4th place team, so that's good for their momentum there. I don't really have much else to say about the CLS, other than kind of seeing a shift in the number 1 team right now. Last Kings over Azurus. For the LLN here, Predators beating Infinity really helps them kind of secure the 2nd place spot. They just are straight up having a really good start to the year. I don't really have too much else to say, though. This is the 2nd time Kha'Zix and Jerome have been on the team of the week, so that's pretty hype for them. But this is the 3rd week in a row now, week 3 of 3, that Lion Gaming have taken home the actual sole MVP player of the week. Their jungler got it twice, and now it's their mid laner. But I honestly, it's always like, no matter how you look at this, this is always just going to be Lion Gaming's region to take. The TSM of Latin America, or Northern Latin America. Let's see here. LCL. Transition. Nice. I think it's really sad to see Gambit go 0-2 since Diamond Prox is on it. As an old M5 fan, I'd love to see a top 3 with M5, M19, Vega Squadron, and Gambit. Just because M19, former Albus Nox Luna, who the wildcard region to make it out of group stages. Vega Squadron is Edward's team. Gambit, as I said, is Diamond's team. It's kind of hard to call exactly who's going to be the top team here for a long time. These are all still like really close, and there's still a lot of League of Legends to play. But I think we can expect to see Vega Squadron stay near the top. They've historically kind of been up there. Let's go over to the Russian Challenger scene now, CCL. So if you remember the context of the SLTV CL last split, Team Just Alpha relegated Team Empire, while Vayvictus Syndicate relegated the main Team Just team. So Team Just is now Team Just Challenger. And then later the Vayvictus Syndicate slot got purchased by Virtus Pro. So Gambit CS Academy and Zoff Gaming, they were both in the top 4 of the Challenger Series last split. While it looks like Star Team, Dolphins of Wall Street, Elements Pro Gaming, and Crow Crowd are the newly qualified teams. Although Crow Crowd actually participated in the last split, but they ended up in 6th place, which was, I believe, a relegation slot. So they had to, or I guess they had to kind of requalify. But this is where we're at right now. I would expect Team Empire and Gambit Academy to kind of stay in the top here for Group B. But for Group A, I would say that this is actually a bit tougher to call. Though I would expect Star Team to stay at the bottom. So these top 3 here. At first glance, I would be tempted to say Zoff Gaming and Team Just Challenger, but Dolphins of Wall Street just beat Team Just Challenger, so that automatically makes it much more interesting. I also don't know the context of why Star had to forfeit this match. And for the GPL here, I don't really have much knowledge of the smaller individual regions, but I do remember that Fortius, the first place team here, was the number 1 team for Indonesia last split, so I wouldn't be surprised if history repeated itself. Or like they weren't the number 1 team, but they were right up there. So, but otherwise, I don't really know anything about this region. But that's it for this week for my news analysis. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I know these are some long videos, but hope you learned some things. I will see you guys in the future with some more League of Legends content.